All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome, and of course, I feel like I got to sneeze right now. um, your host Alan Orick here with Sean Williams, Bob Rose. We are now in the second week of OTAs. Tomorrow wraps up week two. Last week was Chris Olave was the star. This week, Jarvis Landry is the star. Um, I named this episode after a Doobie Brothers song that I happen to like a lot, but What a Fool Believes. And the reason why I picked this title is because OTAs is we're so desperate for football that OTAs becomes, I don't know, like it's your first semi taste of it. And then once you watch these guys out there running around, Jameis threw a deep bomb last week to Chris Olave, who easily caught it for, 60 or 70-yard touchdown, whatever. We go from before we signed the Honey Badger and Landry and all had the draft that we had, we weren't winning a game. We were 0-17. We were going to go 0-17. Now we're going anywhere from 17-0 to 19-0. Who's going to stop us? They can't stop anything that we do. So it is. It's the foolish optimism of this season. You think I'm off base with that?
Not at all. Not at all. It's always made me laugh to myself how much people read into just the most simplest and most basic things like OTAs. You're just basically doing walkthroughs.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it's like you and your buddies in a pickup game, except it's organized and you've got a helmet on. But yeah, it is a lot like that. And essentially, you have these great athletes showing that they're in good condition. And the other thing that was kind of scary, I guess, or frustrating, depending on your point of view, is, Michael Thomas is still rehabbing. So people are freaking out about that. And other players were not participating in these OTAs, which, they don't even say it anymore, but it used to be voluntary, right. Which, they're trusting these guys to be in shape. This is not training camp yet, so there's no reason to freak out if someone's not participating in these glorified pickup games that they do out there. So, Bob, your take on the situation.
I absolutely agree with you guys, and I'll go even a little bit further. People also get ratcheted up over training camp performances, and who might not have shown up the first couple of days. Everything like that. I look for three things, and really one of them is sort of irrelevant in this day and age. I bet you, back when the three of us were growing up and well into our adult years, you would hear about certain players, sometimes stars, coming in overweight or grotesquely out of shape. Mm-hmm. So you always worry about that kind of thing. But these guys keep themselves in such great condition all year round because it is a business to them. It is their livelihood to them. And there's so much heated competition for jobs that, the number one of my three concerns is really irrelevant. Number two is how are the injured players rehabbing? I don't care that they're not on the field yet, just like you said. All I care about is that they're making progress. If Michael Thomas is running, that's progress. If Andrus Peat is going through light workouts, that's progress. The three of us mentioned prior to coming on the air, Jameis Winston is 7 months, give or take a week, removed from reconstructive knee surgery. And go back and click on that tape. That's an ugly ass injury. That he suffered. My worry there is that a guy, him or a guy like him, is pushing it too hard, and they're going to re-aggravate something. Take a chill, folks. Take a chill. The only thing that you should be concerned about is how the rookies and new players are integrating themselves with their teammates and fellow coaches. Other than that, I only keep my fingers crossed day after day, week after week of OTAs and training camp. Please, for the love of God, avoid a freak injury. That's it.
Absolutely. Well, that leads to my next point of discussion. So, all the draft picks for the Saints have been signed except for one, the cornerback Alontae Taylor. Now, he was out there last week. I don't know if he's out
Mhm.
there this week or not. Um, so, we're all old enough that we remember the days of training camp holdouts because rookies haven't signed deals, or when veterans step away and hold out for renegotiated contracts. I mean, they all did it. Ricky Jackson did it. Pat Swilling did it. Um, uh, I remember when Tony Elliott, who was the nose guard
Yeah.
for the Saints, held out for more money, and he ended up getting a raise, but it was after they took the fines away for him holding out. He actually had less money than he would have shown up at the beginning of training camp. And Jim Fink said this of Tony Elliott: he's as strong as an ox and about as smart as one too. You know,
I remember.
but we
Bob,
don't
to
really.
speak to the point that you made, the first point about the coming in out of shape, and I don't ever remember a time like when we were coming up that football was such a year-round thing as it is now.
Right.
It wasn't. It wasn't.
No.
I had an argument with a historian actually on a New Orleans history group about Archie Manning working for Roy Oldsmobile, and it wasn't much of an argument. I just pointed out that his information was a little off. But in the '70s, it wasn't uncommon that the players held a regular job,
Mhm.
the other 9 months of the year, and showed up training camp, like you said, Bob, to get in shape. And they had 6 preseason games, it shrank down to 4. Um, but Archie sold cars in the off season. Um, when you watch something on the America's game, the '72 Dolphins and the '73 Dolphins, I like to watch those two a lot. Dick Anderson, who was a safety for the Dolphins, said, during in between practices, when they get a break, he'd go out to his car and make phone calls. And one of the early car phones that he bought had the old, not the phone in the bag, but the old looked like a boomerang
Yeah.
antenna on your trunk. Yeah, he'd have to make phone calls because he was a real estate broker, and here he is at practice, and he's got to make calls because that was his living.
Mhm.
Football was almost like a side gig, and that was true for a lot of these guys.
Not
And
to mention the fact that they were paid almost nothing in that
well,
era.
that's
Yeah.
why they had to do it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, they got Dwayne Thomas again, going back to America's game. Dwayne Thomas, the year he didn't talk to anybody in '71 when Dallas went to the Super Bowl. Um, one of his contentions was that they didn't pay the players, and famously or infamously, the old general manager for the Dallas Cowboys, Tech Schramm, once told the players, we're the ranchers and you're the cattle, and we can always get more cattle.
Right.
So,
That's that's pretty much how they viewed it. So Dwayne Thomas says, he's talking to some of the players, and he finds out how much these guys make and stuff, and he says, I wonder if it's a black or white issue. So he asked Bob Lilly, who is arguably at the time for the
Mr. Cowboy.
the best Cowboys player on the roster, asked him how much he's making. And he finds out and he goes, they don't pay anybody on this team. They're not even paying the star of this
Yeah.
team, So
And this coming from the guy that was probably the preeminent superstar on that team at that time, Bob Lilly.
Bob Lilly, yes. But
Mhm.
Dwayne
When
Thomas.
they refer to you as Mr. Cowboy,
Oh yeah,
that speaks to a little bit of the reputation.
Right.
absolutely. And I was just saying, Dwayne Thomas really illustrates, because that was his big sticking point. Here I rushed for 1,000 yards, best running back the Cowboys had ever had at the time, and he couldn't get a raise. He couldn't get any
Mhm.
money. and it's funny to, you think about how much players make today, even adjusted for inflation, the 60s and 70s, and they weren't even close to what the league minimum is today. I mean,
Yeah.
they just didn't get paid anything. So it was very common for these players to work in the off season at a regular job. NFL films follow one Pittsburgh Steelers player who happened to be somebody who actually worked in a steel mill. They thought that was a cool thing. So, getting back to the Saints, so that's that's why, since they instituted the rookie salary cap, you never see players hold on anymore because it's already set up and established. So apparently, one of the sticking points for Jackson is Taylor, not Jackson, is that he is holding out for guaranteed money. Bob, what do you know about this?
I know very little, but I have heard that too, and we have heard that some of the first round draft picks that were signing a little bit slower than what we have seen in recent years, that the sticking point was guaranteed money too. So I do think that kind of raises a dark cloud over the horizon for the next couple of years, at least until the next collective bargaining agreement gets dealt with, and I don't remember when that is. The players, the draft picks, specifically the first and second round draft picks, are pushing or having their agents push for more guaranteed money, and that's the issue with Alontae Taylor. I believe that Taylor will probably be signed by the end, if not before, but by the end of the mandatory minicamp, which is next week. I don't remember the dates. But yeah, that's what I heard too, Alan, is that the sticking point is the guaranteed money. The overall yearly average, as you pointed out, is already slotted at a certain financial figure. But that's how these players, and the guaranteed money is where they're, because it's guaranteed. A lot of people don't realize that these players can still be on the hook, and for lack of a better term, lose a certain amount of money. They don't get the figures that we see in the newspaper. 5 years, $20 million. Don't pay as much attention to that as the guaranteed money factor, because that is literally the only portion that these players are guaranteed to have.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up because that's something that's carried over from the NBA. This idea of guaranteed money, and the veteran players are starting to get this now. It makes it harder. It makes these contracts a lot more difficult to negotiate because you no longer have the out. The players will still get their money, but if they're guaranteed this money, then if they are injured or suspended, Deshaun Watson, that really puts the team financially in a hole that they can't recover from. And now the rookies, since they're not going to get paid much anyway, because it wasn't that long ago that first round draft picks, especially top draft picks in the top 10, were getting paid more than some of the stars on the team.
Right, which would result in veteran stars often holding out. So it was a catch-22.
Absolutely. So now agents have figured out that the guaranteed money portion is now what they want to get their hands on, because now as a draft pick, you can demand guaranteed money, especially if you look at what did the Saints give Smoke Monday and Rashad Shaheed, the two undrafted free agents. They gave them the largest signing bonuses, and I think part of that was guaranteed. In fact,
I believe so.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah,
yeah. So Taylor's looking at this, going, "Hey, these guys getting guaranteed money. These guys didn't get drafted to getting guaranteed money. What about me? Why do I have to wait 3 to 4 years before I can get some of this money? I at least want to get some guaranteed money out of this. So I think that's what you're seeing with these things now. I think you're going to see now once again some of these holdouts happening like you used to in the old days because these guys are holding out for some extra money. Sean,
Yes,
I was
sir.
going to ask you about this. Speaking to Deshaun Watson, the Saints were intensively going after him.
I don't know. Let me stop you there.
Okay.
I don't know just exactly how much I believe that.
Well, Gail Benson allegedly came out there with to meet him on one of the occasions. So, they were pretty serious about this. And now it's come out that the 24th accuser was 22, then 23. Now it's 24 accusers. And now we're starting to get some of the lurid details because that's the kind of world we live in now. It's all fun and games so you get the details about what he was asking these women to do exactly. So a story came out from Mike Florio that the Browns may be able to get out of this contract that they did guaranteed money on.
A bunch of guaranteed money.
Yes, all of it was guaranteed money. I guess my question to you is this a case like the Clowney story from a couple of years ago? Maybe was it last year? I don't even remember anymore. Where we dodged the bullet on Clowney. Some of the other players that we tried to get and we were desperate to get. I'm thinking of the old Carolina Panthers cornerback who ended up going over to the Washington Redskins, Josh Norman. Or Peyton is on the phone with him as he's walking in the Redskins facility. Don't sign that deal. We can work something out. Out. And turned out once Norman went to the Redskins, he was terrible. He wasn't as good as he was in Carolina. Is this a case of the Saints, once again, dodging a bullet despite their best efforts to jump in front of it?
Well, yes, I believe so. But I'm thinking here on as far as the Browns go, they've painted themselves into a corner because you had a playoff quarterback.
Good, you went right where I was going to go. You
openly and very publicly courted a sexual deviant to come in and take his place and be your franchise quarterback before you cut ties with him. Okay, it's beginning to look more and more and more like Deshaun Watson is not going to be available.
Yeah.
What do you do? Do you honestly think that Baker Mayfield is going to walk out on that field and lead your team? That is not the professional athlete of today.
Well, and that's exactly where I was going. I'm glad that's why I asked you this question, because I wanted to lead you into the Baker Mayfield situation. So yeah,
and to be honest, I can't blame him.
Yeah, I mean,
Baker,
you made this deal, okay, and then you throw Mayfield under the bus afterwards, saying you thank God we have an adult at quarterback, an adult who apparently likes to ask masseuses to play with his and would
provide happy endings.
Well, beyond provide happy endings.
And then you got a defending lawyer that goes on a Houston radio show and makes the comment, happy endings are not against the law.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but when you ask for them, that's kind of what they refer to as prostitution, dumbass.
He apparently wants these masseuses to perform a prostate exam on him, but they don't need to wear a glove. So, But
like
yeah,
you said, as the details come out,
exactly.
it gets darker and seedier, and
Yeah. So
it's beginning to look now. Granted, I want to say this up front and first and foremost, I still believe in the system,
mhm,
and until you are proven guilty, you are innocent, and that holds true for Deshaun Watson. But the optics of this are that he is guilty as hell.
well, and I'm going to lead this to you in a second, Bob. But I mean, to me, the thing is, ultimately, the reason why this hasn't gone to trial and it failed both times, it's gone to the grand jury, is there's no physical evidence, pardon the phrasing, but there isn't. There isn't any kind of physical or objective evidence to prove that there was a coercion or there was any kind of non consensual activity other than he said, she said.
I come
And
from the school of thought that, okay, if I'm going to quote my boss here, he said on the radio this morning, if you run into a jerk in the morning, you just run into a jerk. By the end of the day, if you have run into jerks all day, chances are you're the jerk. 24 separate civil suits have been
yeah,
filed against this guy.
mhm. And for a civil suit, the threshold's a lot lower, obviously, than a criminal case.
Yeah.
So Bob, so now you're the Cleveland Browns. No, let's take this back. You are Baker Mayfield. You're sitting on a beach in Cancun with Snoop Dogg, enjoying a Corona. You took your cell phone, dropped it in the ice bucket because you want to erase your calendar. What are you thinking watching this unfold in Cleveland? Because they tried to trade you, and they got close to trading you to Carolina, but Carolina wasn't willing to swallow that $18.8 million. What are you thinking about this right now?
If I'm Baker Mayfield, I am laughing hysterically every minute of every day.
Yeah.
Because I'm making a hell of a lot of money sitting on that beach, drinking that Corona, hanging out with Snoop. Filming the new Baker's House commercials are not going to be in the Mistake by the Lake, but they're going to be with palm trees in the background. If you're a human being, you hate to wish ill will on anybody, but when you're a human being, you wish ill will on people. It's just, it's natural. And I agree with what Sean said. I mean, Cleveland did Baker so dirty. It got Matt Ryan traded out of Atlanta because they did him just as dirty. And that's why before I go back to Baker, I'll again give accolades to the Saints organization because they clearly kept Jameis Winston in the loop the entire way.
Yeah.
If they did, and if you don't believe that, folks, give your skull a knock to rattle whatever's out of place back in place, because Jameis Winston simply would not have re-signed with the Saints, Deshaun Watson or no, if they didn't keep him in the loop. And that thing happened too instantaneously. So the Saints, front office and organization deserves all kinds of accolades. But back to Baker Mayfield. I mean, he's sitting, and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, Baker will never play for Cleveland again." Money talks, folks.
Oh, absolutely.
So I don't discount that at all. It's not a question of if Watson gets suspended. It's a question of how long. And if it's for a year, if it's for a minimum of a year, if you're the Browns, you have to go to Cleveland, to Baker, and you say, what do you want for a 1 year or 2 year contract with everything bam on that first year, with a voidable deal where we can part ways more amicably, at least publicly. That's, I think, is a very, very real scenario where Baker Mayfield is behind center for the Cleveland Browns in 2022.
Yeah, and that, I know this is a Saints podcast, but we're veering off into that direction because, once again, this is the Saints dodging a bullet for me, and I'm one of the ones that wanted Watson. I'm not going to deny that because I thought his talent was such that you have to make that play. Okay.
Agreed.
And I, of course, didn't know the sort of details of, I knew about what he did. I had a good idea of what he did. But my thing was, okay, maybe this is something that he did and he's learned in this past year of banishment that he could straighten himself out and he could become a different or a better person. So I was willing to give him that opportunity. I was not willing to pay him $320 million guaranteed. That's not what I would have done. And I know they wanted a lot of draft picks for him too, but I felt like you could negotiate the draft picks. I would put conditions on the draft, and we've talked about this in the past. Put conditions on draft picks to protect myself in case this very thing happened. But we could have easily ended up in this same situation. Yeah. And maybe Jameis, if we get Watson, Jameis takes off and goes to Indianapolis, or maybe he goes to Seattle or someplace like that. And so, you're facing the idea of having Deshaun Watson, probably, the other two backup quarterbacks, Ian Book and the Red Rifle. That's your choice as a backup. But then you're also thinking about, hey, we've got all this optimism. We would have had probably signed these other receivers too. You've got a team like this, you're ready to go, and yet this is hanging over your whole offseason.
Yeah.
You are waiting for Goodell to drop the hammer and kill your 2022 season. Because basically, I looked it up, the Browns' alternative, if Mayfield says, you know what, I'm not coming, I'm going to sit and collect my $18.8 million because you got to pay me. You got to pay me. I'm not showing up to any of your off-season activities. I'm not showing up to practice. You go ahead and get Jacoby Brissett ready. He's going to be your quarterback. That's what you got to look at. And you better go dig under every rock you can find to find some old washed-up veteran quarterback. Ryan Fitzpatrick just retired, so you can't even sign him. But you better go find yourself some washed-up quarterback or talk somebody out of retirement to come and play. Maybe Vinny's kept himself in shape. You get Vinny Testaverde to come back. But, I mean...
See, my concern with Baker, though, is, as the old saying goes, you can't put the crap back in the horse.
Yeah.
The Browns went out of their way not just to humiliate him through the whole courtship of Deshaun Watson, but then they start making these comments and press releases about how Baker was a problem in the locker room and he wasn't a good teammate. Now you come back with your hat in your hand because you realize that you crapped the bed.
And you screwed yourself out of a possible good trade. You could have traded Baker for much better draft picks if you don't go ahead and sabotage your own trade as you...
That's the part I didn't get.
Yeah. You start talking all this shit about Baker. Oh, who wants him now? I certainly didn't. I mean, you don't want somebody like that. You don't want all these stories coming out. You want to talk up the guy. You want to say, look, he's a great guy. It just didn't work out for us. We want to go in a different direction, but there's nothing wrong with, we really appreciate what he did. He got the Browns back to the playoffs for the first time since, do you know who the quarterback was back then? Who was the Browns quarterback, the last one taken to the playoffs?
I do.
Bernie Kosar?
No.
Good guess, though.
Yeah, Bernie did get him there, but no, this is 2002. Who was it, Bob?
Kelly Holcomb.
There we go. Kelly Holcomb. I know this because I have a Browns fan that he private messages me a lot about Kelly Holcomb and how he was pissed off that Kelly Holcomb didn't get to start after that. And he says that ruined it. That was it, So, but the last Browns quarterback to take him was Kelly Holcomb. So,
and before that was Testaverde in 94, 95.
94. Yeah, because 95 was the season that their season got torpedoed.
Right. Right.
Yeah, because that's when Mordell announced that he was moving the team because they were on their way to the playoffs. They were doing really well, but once that story hit, everything went to hell, and the team fell apart. And that's why Bill Belichick ended up getting fired, leaving the team. And what's amazing about that, if you watch, I know this has turned into a Cleveland Browns podcast. This is what happens during the offseason.
Right.
If you watch America's Game, the 95 season of the Cleveland Browns,
that was an excellent one.
You look at that staff that Belichick had put together, okay? You got Nick Saban on that team. You've got in that office. You've got damn it, I just drew a blank on everybody else's names. But you've got
Pioli was there.
Yeah, Scott Pioli. You have the guy who just got fired from Atlanta, who was the GM before Terry Donahue. Yeah, he was there. The old the defensive line coach who ended up being the head coach of the Detroit Lions. When the Saints played him in 2011.
Not Caldwell. We just had this, but Crennel was there.
Romeo
Crennel, who just retired.
Yeah.
You had the guy Mangini was on that staff. Yeah. And the guy he was grooming he was a scout for that team, for the Cleveland Browns team, but he ended up being one of the best general managers in NFL history, modern NFL history. Ozzie Newsome was a scout for that team, and Bill Belichick taught him how to scout. And he took Bill Belichick's philosophy to the Baltimore Ravens, which were the Browns that went to Baltimore, and he turned that team into, I don't want to say the word dynasty, but a juggernaut, because he mastered how to run a draft. And the Cleveland Browns, as long as Ozzie Newsome was there, was consistently a good draft decision maker. And it was all from Bill Belichick. So the Browns were this close, once again, to becoming the New England Patriots in the 90s. Modell torpedoed them by moving and then firing him. But he was very close. And all those coaches, that entire coaching staff and front office personnel, all learned from Belichick how to build a franchise. You listen to Bill Belichick speak and you listen to Nick Saban speak. They are virtually identical in their press conferences, the way they address issues.
Emperor Palpatine has an evil twin. Don't discount that for 1 second.
So, you talk about coaching trees. We always talk about the, Bill Parcells coaching tree and the coaching tree, of course, of
Holmgren.
Well, Holmgren comes from
Bill Walsh.
Oh, Bill Walsh. That's what I meant. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Bill Walsh's coaching tree, and you can go even further back, and you can go back to Paul Brown and his coaching tree. Shula, Noel, and even it's not Walsh, or he was offensive coordinator for Paul Brown, but his concepts of the West Coast offense came from that. So, it's just amazing to watch. And like I said, and the reason I'm bringing all this stuff up is, aside from the fact we were talking about Deshaun Watson, these are the kind of mistakes that make you a failure at a franchise, because you make these bad decisions that screw you over again and again and again. So yeah,
I can't see a way that they would be able to get out of that contract with it being guaranteed.
If they have they say they have a personal conduct clause in it. And
but will that cover something that happened before he signed that contract?
It should, because and to use a medical term, it'd be considered a pre-existing situation. But don't think for 1 second that the Texans would have to give back the draft picks The only
No.
thing Cleveland would be able to do would be get out from under the Watson deal financially. They would still be they've still torpedoed that franchise as far as draft capital goes.
Absolutely, and the Saints had a similar situation. You remember when they signed the defensive tackle came from the Lions the year that
Fairly.
yeah, Nick Fairley. He had the heart condition, and it was discovered in a second cardiogram they did on him. And the Saints used the argument that he negotiated that contract in bad faith. He was aware that he flunked the first test in order to recapture some of that guaranteed money. So yeah, it's they have lawyers to try and get their money back, even though it's guaranteed. But yeah, you lose your draft picks. So, but that's really what I was going for with this. You know, when we're talking about guaranteed money and we're talking about mistakes, this is probably going to be the lesson learned. And Deshaun Watson's probably going to screw it for a lot of players that they will not give a fully guaranteed contract to players because of this. And
just for the record, I was never on the wagon to pursue him. I didn't want anything to do with him.
Yeah. I was only on the wagon from the standpoint of he's too good of a talent not to pursue him.
Yeah.
Well, on one hand, yes, I can see that. On the other hand, he was a good talent that's been out of football for over a year.
Yeah.
You've got all these legal situations looming overhead.
Mm-hmm.
It's just too big a gamble to wind up in the position that the Browns are in right now, to me.
Well, and you definitely have to look at what the compensation was. And like I said from the outset, there were compensations that I was willing to concede to get him, and there were some that I was not. 3 first-round picks was ridiculous. I'm not giving away that much. I will give away a first, and some additional picks, a conditional pick that could turn into a first if he met thresholds a la Ricky Williams. You know, you think about Ricky Williams, the deal that Randy Mueller did when he sent him to Miami. I got a first-round pick. If Ricky Williams leads the league in rushing, it becomes this. If he gets over 1,500 yards, it becomes this. These are like ridiculous options, and the Dolphins are like, hell yeah, we'll sign up for that. And that year, every time they showed Miami, I'm like, run, Ricky, run. I want that first-round pick. Run, Ricky, run. I was the biggest Ricky Williams fan probably since 1999, the first years with the Dolphins. I'm like, oh, yeah. Do what you got to do, Ricky. I want to see that. And Ricky Williams said all he cared about was beating Deuce McAllister that year in all his statistics. So, and that's all he cared about. I'm like, well, hell yeah, that's going to work out for us. So, but yeah, I mean, that's probably the biggest issue. Okay, switching gears back from the Browns to the Saints. Training camp or OTA stars. I'm gonna ask both of y'all to pick out a player, and then we set a couple off the air. But guys who you saw in OTAs that were just so unbelievable that people thought for sure this was going to be. They had him in the Saints Hall of Fame. They had him in the NFL Hall of Fame. They thought this was going to be the player of the year. And I'm a preface this. And there was also, think of a guy who looked terrible in the OTAs. Looked like he didn't even belong in the franchise. And then once training camp hit and the regular season went on, this guy ended up being a good player, started having an impact on the team. All those things. Think of like a an OTA stud and an OTA bust. And I'll let you simmer on that, Sean, because I'm gonna hit Bob with it first. Because I can see on Bob's face, he's got the names right now. Who was your OTA star?
My OTA star, training camp star, was unquestionably Brandon Coleman. And to be fair, I was a fan of BC16. But in 2015, a lot of people forget that he missed his rookie year because of a knee injury. In 2015, he did look like, in shorts, he looked like what everybody was saying he was, and that was the next Marcus Colston. I mean, he was just dominating defensive backs left and right. I guess looking back, I should have, outside of Delvin Breaux, I should have been looking harder at who the defensive backs were he was playing. But yeah, for sure. I mean, Brandon Coleman looked like he was going to be the next superstar wide receiver for Drew Brees, and keep that 5,000 yard a season train rolling. Obviously, that was mistaken. And Brandon was a serviceable pro, don't get me wrong, but he was nowhere near what people said he was going to be in that training camp. Training camp, awful guy in training camp, honestly. And I'll stay with that same era. Delvin Breaux. Delvin, and you guys love Delvin as much as I do. Delvin looked awful. And I think his first year was 2015 too, ironically enough.
Calvin's not a fan. Calvin's not a fan.
You can, you could say, and there are 5 overrated corners that I could spout. Yeah, even if we're going to disagree about Breaux, Calvin, there are 5 cornerbacks that I could spout off. I guarantee you, were more overrated. But Delvin Breaux looked horrid in training camp, and I knew the story because I'd researched some of the more notable players before I took the girls to that training camp. And I was rooting for him so hard because of what he had to overcome just to get back onto the field. I root for anyone coming from the CFL or back in the day the USFL too, because the odds are just against them. And I was afraid he wasn't going to make it out of training camp. So that'd be my flip side. I have an Andrews Pete training camp story too. Once you guys give your opinions.
Okay, go ahead, Sean.
Well, Breaux was one of mine, but I think Al Toon as well. You thought he was going to be something.
Nick Toon.
Nick Toon.
Al Toon was good. Al was good. Nick was not. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And as far as Breaux goes, it depends on the sample that you use. His first year here, he played very well.
On an awful defense.
Yeah, a historically bad defense. And then after that, when he started getting these little nicks and bumps, injuries, it fell apart.
So who was your guy that you thought was going to be really good, had a great OTA training camp, and turned out come the regular season he wasn't very good?
Nick Toon.
Oh, Nick Toon. Okay. All right. Well,
yeah.
I deliberately did not post this because I thought y'all would both jump on that. But Colston's a great example of a guy who looked terrible. He was out of shape. He was struggling to get his breath in those OTAs in the first couple of weeks of training camp. And he really worked to get himself in shape and show that what he could do, so much so that Sean Payton was willing to move on from Dante Stallworth, who was a much more talented receiver, but didn't have nearly the work ethic that Marcus Colston had. And that's what made Colston a good player. But I'm going to go back in time a little bit because, I can name some players like Honore Ojo was somebody who was always Mr. Off-Season. Marcus Murphy. What's his name now? The speedster Andy Tanner was catching everything. That's all we did here. He catch everything until we got to a game where they put pads on. They didn't even catch anything. But Sam Mills, believe it or not, when he first came to training camp, Jim Mora looked at him and says, he's too small. He's struggling. He's getting overwhelmed. They're getting after him too much, And if you watch those early games in 1986, they're on YouTube. You see guys like Alvin Tolles. You see, what was the other? Glenn Red. You see those guys getting starts over Sam Mills. Sam Mills was a special team guy, and he came in on certain packages. And as the season moved along in '86, Sam Mills starts getting the starts, and then they start seeing the effect because he was too intelligent. And once he figured out a defense, he would get himself in the right positions. But yeah, that's a good example of a guy. He's a Hall of Fame player. And I don't, but at the time when he started in the NFL, there's a reason why the Browns cut him. There's a reason why teams didn't want him, and he ended up bouncing the AF and the old USFL. But, it took him a little bit of time to come along. So that's probably one of the guys I'd really, is my surprise player that just really blossomed, and probably he and Colson the ultimate in greatest players. Just Sam's going to go into the NFL Hall of Fame. I don't think Marcus Colson ever will. So
sadly, no.
Yeah. Who was a receiver from a couple of seasons ago? He was talking about. Could be almost anybody.
Yeah, right.
There have been so few.
Well, no, it's just like there's always somebody in training camp that everybody loves. Andy Tanner keeps coming to mind.
Adrian Arrington was another one.
Adrian Arrington, yeah. Gosh, I don't remember. I really don't remember. Well, Pierre Thomas. You could talk about him too, but Pierre Thomas really won that job in training camp. I mean, he really did.
Yeah.
But think of a guy who really shined in preseason in training camp, and when he came to the regular season, he just did not look as good. I think you kind of throw Tony Jones in that mix. Go to a recent one because
Jones and Bond.
Yeah.
The flip side of that, somebody that really shined during the preseason and actually turned out to be a fairly good player until injuries derailed him was Kyrie.
Yes. Yes, but he showed something in fact, I kept saying the whole time Travaris Cadet was gone because I thought Kyrie Robinson beat him out. But they were two different kinds of backs. Chris Ivory, Pierre Thomas, all those undrafted guys. It seemed like we could always find an undrafted free agent running back who could really contribute something to the team.
Which was really convenient considering we weren't drafting well before Ireland got here.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was funny. I mean, Pierre Thomas is obviously the most famous because here he beat out the 4th-round pick, Pittman, Antonio Pittman from Ohio State. Going all the way back to 2006, 2007, we're drafting Ohio State backs. But yes, I know that's why I'm kind of hesitant to really throw it in. But Tony Jones really disappointed me from just his ability to hit the hole quickly.
Yes.
That was my disappointment. He's playing behind a crap offensive line. He gets tackled right away. I can deal with that. Him getting tackled in the backfield and struggling to get going, that's what I thought was more troubling than anything else with him. I can deal with you running into the line. I can't deal with you just failing to make the corner and just turn and go. And I thought that was a problem when Mark Ingram was suspended and they were going through those running backs and, got those guys from New England and they just could not, they get to their landmark and they're supposed to cut up and go and they couldn't do it, So yeah, those things are always frustrating. But yeah, there's a lot of guys in Saints history who, shine in training camp and then go on from there. I'll throw another guy out there. I thought, you're probably going to laugh at this, but I thought Vaughn Dunbar had a good training camp, ran pretty well his rookie year in the preseason game. I'm thinking about that American Bowl game when they played in Japan, his rookie season. He looked pretty good in those games. But then when it came to the regular season, he just showed no instinct as a runner. And then he blows out his knee and is never the same kind of back again.
Yeah.
That's the thing about a running back at this level. That hitting the hole, that you can't be the kind of player that you are in college where you have to consciously think about it. It's got to be instinctual.
Mm-hmm.
You got to feel that hole open, not think about where it is or where it's supposed to be.
Exactly. And if the hole isn't there, you have the vision to see there's another opening. I got to make it. And you have to have the patience. It's weird. You've got to be quick and decisive, but you also have to be patient. You have to be patient to let the play develop so you can see it, but you make a quick decision and go. Put your foot in and go. You know, when you make that decision, you go. And I think a lot of times college backs look at a play like in the NFL, they always think, I have more time than I have to make that decision because the speed isn't as great. And in the case of somebody like Reggie Bush always thought he could make the corner because he always did it in college. If I just cut back and run to the outside, I'm going to get to the corner before the defense does, and that's where I'll get my speed. And he didn't. There is no corner to make because the hash marks are so close in the NFL compared to college football where they're out here. And high school football, even further out, you know. So the defense is already in the middle of the field. They have fast enough. They can get to that corner just as quickly as you can.
That's the thing, though. At this level, everybody is good. You're not playing against a team that's got 2 or 3 stars this week. You're playing against 22 of the best at what they do in the world. And having been a running back, I don't think it's always fair to judge a running back by the offensive line that he runs behind. Now, sometimes, yes, it's warranted. But as a running back, you accept the fact that from time to time, it's going to be on you. It's just not going to be there. You got to make something out of it.
Right, exactly. You know, and running back it's not as bad as it used to be because there's so much of I guess running back by committee. You're not the guy who's going to get 300 and something carries, 400 carries in a season anymore. They break it out among so many. I'm really wondering who the hell Calvin's talking about. So I'm trying to think of who this could be.
The only other receiver that within the last few years that popped into my head was Cyril Grayson, who I thought should have made the team. One of his 2 camps with the Saints, but I don't remember anybody going as gaga over Cyril as they were over the Nick Toons, Adrian Arringtons, Andy Tanners, even Brandon Coleman's. I don't think Cyril got that much notoriety, but I also feel like I'm missing something in here.
Yeah, I'm looking through real quick just to see who shows up. Problem is if they were on the preseason roster, they're not there.
Right.
You know, Tommy Lee Lewis shows up. Jake Lampman. I'm going to 2016 now. Let's see if I can find somebody else. It gets. When he said the next Moss, that's what triggered it. Because I do remember there was a guy that the fans were just talking about how he was going to be this stud. Centavious Jones. That's probably who you're thinking of.
That's the one.
Tavius Jones. I knew if I went back far enough, 2015, Tavius Jones. That's who it is. Sean digging his Al Bundy football stories.
Hey,
Yeah.
I did score 3 touchdowns in a game before too. So I wasn't big, but I was fast.
Yeah. But Seantavius Jones, that was the guy who was supposed to be the next guy.
Calvin, when I made that comment, I don't mean every time that the play breaks down, they expect you to make something positive out of it. But on the flip side of that coin, when you, even if you are playing behind a crap line, you repeatedly take this negative yardage, and that starts to add up.
I had a 3-pick 6 game too, but I wasn't the one catching them. I was the one throwing them. That's always fun.
And yeah, I saw the name scroll across the bottom of the screen. I can't remember his first name, but Butler wore number 17. Came within the last 2 or 3. Yeah. I did get sick and tired of hearing his damn name every single day. Oh yeah, Butler made another spectacular catch. Okay, but in the remote link I'm watching, he also dropped 2 and clearly ran the wrong route in 3 other opportunities.
That reminds me of a Hank Stram story. Hank Stram was head coach of the Saints. He talked about how Bobby Douglas threw to the wrong player wrong receiver 17 times, and that wasn't bad enough. The follow-up question and answer was even better. The coach, the reporter says, "Well, why didn't you pull him?" He says, "I didn't think you could keep doing it." And the Saints receivers, I had said this time last year, the Saints receiving core, I thought from 2021 was the weakest since the 1977 Saints. And that's going back pretty far. Because even the Ditka years, you still had people who could catch. You had Andre Hastings. You had, they called him the White Rice. Come on, man. I'm 83. I can't think of his name right now. Keith Poole. Yeah, Keith Poole, who was always
he was a Ditka favorite.
Yes. I mean, he was a guy. He was kind of like a better Traquan Smith. If there was a big game, Keith Poole was guaranteed to get like 3 catches and 100-something yards and a touchdown so yeah, he was just one of these guys that would have these things. And easy on the Butlers. Butler did it, but yeah, the 27.
Considering that those teams had passes being thrown by Danny Werfel, Heath Schuler, if you have one game with triple digits.
Well, that was the thing. It wasn't the receivers that were so bad. It was really the quarterbacks that were bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know how Billy Joe Hobart ended up on the Saints, right? You know the story about Billy Joe Hobart? You don't know?
No.
I know Bob knows. So Billy Joe Hobart was the 3rd-string quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. And they had one of those games where both starting quarterbacks got knocked out. So Billy Joe Hobart had to come in and play. And he was terrible. He threw picks. He was just awful out there. So in the post-game press conference, here he is talking to the reporters, and he admits right there, well, I wasn't really prepared. I hadn't prepared myself properly for this game because I didn't think I'd ever play. Well, Bill's front office and coaching staff hears this, they cut him. So here's Mike Ditka. You got cut for not being prepared. My God, you'll fit on this team perfectly. We're gonna bring you in, and we got Billy Joe Tolliver, so we don't even have to change the things on the lockers. We just put Billy Joes next to each other. We got number 11 Tolliver, number 12 Hobart. We'll put you side by side, Billy Joes, and Billy Joe Hobart. So
And just to, and I only have this written down because it was research that I did for a piece. It might have been last right as soon as the season ended, but the 3 years of the Ditka era, he started 7 different quarterbacks. The Billy Joe horrors, Werfel, Schuler, Jake Delhomme, and Doug Nussmeier.
And Kerry Collins.
Yes. Yeah. Kerry Collins is the one I'm missing. 15-33 record. Yeah, okay. We know how bad that is. 48 touchdowns, 82 interceptions, average 16.7 points per game. Collectively, the group completed 49% of their passes in 1997, 52% in 98, 52% in 99. I could go on and on. Those are just the lowlights of the horror.
Well, Ditka,
must have counted practice completions too.
Right.
That was one of my all-time favorite stories on Buddy D. The guy said they interviewed Hazlitt when Hazlitt was head coach, and it was after a terrible Saints loss, and this is near the end of the Hazlitt era. Not 2005 because Buddy was gone by now, but it was like 2003, 2004. And, they talked to Hazlitt about the game and says, well, I just don't get this team. They're just not consistent enough. We had a great week of practice, and we just aren't translated into the game on the field. So after Buddy plays his interview, the very first caller he puts on the air, the caller says, well, can I buy tickets to practice then? Because I'm going to watch the games. That was the good old days. But I remember Mike Ditka bragging or talking about how he just wanted a quarterback who could complete 60% of his passes.
Yeah.
You better go back to Chicago then.
Yeah, well, and here's, you just want to complete 60% of your passes. Drew Brees, over the last 4 years, he was a starter for the Saints. 73% of his passes he's completing. We're trying to get to 60. And Brees is 12 and 13 points higher, so percentage points. And throwing a hell of a lot more than those guys did.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's and then one last Ditka story. So Heath Schuler was by far the worst quarterback that he brought in. Saying he was worse than Danny Werfel.
Agreed.
Because Danny at least knew what he was doing. He just couldn't. He had no arm strength. And what was worst of all, he threw the football funny. He threw it almost like a shot put.
Yeah.
He didn't put any kind of spin on the ball. It just kind of floated out there. So he's weak armed and he doesn't have a good throwing mechanic. It has no speed. So that's why he was able to get picked off as easily as he did. But Schuler just was blind or just dumb. He couldn't figure out what to do with a football. So he made a bad call in a game. Ditka got so pissed off that he called timeout, got Schuler to the sideline, sent Werfel in for a play. So Ditka had an opportunity to chew his ass out on the sideline, called timeout again, and sent Schuler back out there after chewing his ass out. Burns 2 timeouts to chew his ass out. So
I've talked to people that interviewed Schuler during that time frame. They said that he is absolutely, without a doubt, one of the dumbest human beings on this planet.
Well, you know what he did after he got out of football because his foot.
I was just gonna point that out.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bob. What did he become after football?
Ladies and gentlemen, he became a United States congressman
from the great state of Tennessee.
Yes, exactly. So
is he still in Congress, Alan? I don't know.
I think he's out. I think he retired. He was a Democrat from Tennessee, if I remember correctly. But yeah, he was a U.S. congressman. So yeah, you're too dumb for football. Has government got a job for you? But
That
yeah,
tells you about the state of the nation, ladies and gentlemen.
absolutely.
Worry,
But yeah,
worry a lot.
it's just it's funny. You go through the dick of quarterbacks, and then even prior to that, you go through the end of the Moore era. We were talking earlier about not wanting to pay quarterbacks. That's why one of the problems that things had with Bobby Hebert, he didn't want to pay. Well, he didn't want to pay any of his players,
Right.
but he definitely didn't want to pay Bobby Hebert. And Bobby Hebert held out all of 1990, which ironically that led to free agency because him holding out and getting his name in a lawsuit. That's why free agency came into existence, because they had a limited free agent system in the late 80s, early 90s called Plan B. And you could protect, I think, 37 or 38 players or something like
It was
that.
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and the rest of the 45-man roster, the rest could be free agents. So that's how the Saints lost Mel Gray. He ended up going to Detroit. That's how the Saints were able to bring in a couple minor players and things like that through Plan B. Well, Bobby Hebert was part of a players' lawsuit because the big name players would never get put out there, and said, you can't do this. You can't just segregate us into, okay, you guys can't go, but you can go. We can't get any money. We can't get paid. And he showed the contracts, television contracts, the league signed, all these other things. So the league essentially ruled that the Plan B was illegal, that they had to create a real free agency, and that opened the door for free agency. But Finks was one of these guys. He was old school. He wanted to break Bobby for daring to stand up to the league. So he wasn't going to pay him, and he wanted to make Bobby come crawl back to the Saints in the 1990s season, except he had no idea how hard-headed that old Cajun was. So that was a year that we went through. We went through 3 quarterbacks that year. A lot of people don't remember this, but the Saints had started John Facenda. They had brought Tommy Kramer out of the bar and had him come in for a while. We have this thing with alcoholic players. I mean, we really do. But
Bobby Hebert,
and then
Hebert, John Facenda, Tommy Kramer.
Go back to the original, Billy Kilmer.
Yeah,
Billy Kilmer, Ken Stabler.
Yeah, Ken Stabler.
There was other one that I was thinking, and I lost.
Kerry Collins.
That was the one.
Well, Kerry Collins got kicked off the team because, 2 things, but I think he called Musham Muhammad Mushmouth. I think it's what he actually called him. He said it was an ethnic slur, but I think it was Mushmouth from the old Bill Cosby cartoon. Kerry Collins was an alcoholic when we brought him in. So just a team that plays in New Orleans with the French Quarter right there. You bring in alcohol. Great idea. So and Ken Stabler, Morton Anderson tells the story. They had training camp at Vero Beach or whatever. No, they had training camp. They still had Vero Beach, and Ken Stabler asked Morton Anderson wants to go for a ride in his car. And Morton looked in, and he's just a rookie in 1982. He looks in the car and sees a bottle of Jack Daniels sitting on the front seat of the car. And he goes, no thanks. And he says, I'm going to show you the sights in Florida and on the coast. And he's like, yeah, that's all right. I don't think so.
I'm good. Yeah.
So we've had a few interesting quarterbacks, but so one of the rumors, and the reason why I brought the other story about Bobby Hebert, one of the rumors was that the Oakland Raiders, speaking of Ken Stabler, the Oakland Raiders wanted to make a trade. They were then the Los Angeles Raiders, but they wanted to make a trade They wanted to trade because Al Davis was pissed at Marcus Allen.
Yeah.
He wanted to trade Marcus Allen and a draft pick for Bobby Hebert. One of the reasons why, and this goes back to the Von Dunbar story, one of the reasons why I think the Saints, Jim Moore, failed to win a playoff game in 91 and 92 is because of a lack of a consistent running game.
Mhm.
Dalton Hayes had blown his knee out in 1990. Was not the same, not the same back he was in 89. Iron and Hayward's weight, up and down, up and down, up and down the whole time. And he was in the doghouse anyway with Jim Moore. Von Dunbar was not the stud that they thought he was going to be. And they had to make that. They made that draft pick in 92 or 93. I think it was 92. No, it was 92. It was 92. Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I think he played in that playoff game. But anyway, so imagine this team with Marcus Allen and an extra draft pick, in 1990. If we just wouldn't have been so stubborn, Marcus Allen ended up playing well into the, mid 90s, mid to late 90s. He kept himself in good shape. He was a pass catching running back. It would have been an interesting change. I think the Saints, depending on what they do at quarterback.
That's it. That's the rub.
Yeah. I don't think Steve Walsh carries them. But if you could have found a quarterback too, I don't know if Wade Wilson would have done it either. But I think a running back on that team probably carries you, to a couple of Jim Everett's still a few years away. He is
right.
The 89 season was too recent. He got him to the NFC Championship game where the phantom sack occurred, but so the Rams weren't willing to dump him yet. So it's just one of those possibilities. Where do you get your quarterback from, in that year? So it's just, again, keeping with the theme of this show, the what ifs, decisions that could have been made, that could have been a disaster, or could have worked out well, Anyway, I got a million old Saints stories. I could tell my Saga of the Saints book, and then some of the crap that I actually lived. And then I would listen to Buddy D a lot of shows and hear all these crazy stories. So yeah. Last thing, minicamp is next week, the 14th through the 16th. They're actually going to allow the public to come see this. What are you hoping to see out of this mini camp? I mean, it's got to be a show. Bob, what do you think? What would you like to see out of this mini camp next week?
I want to see how the rookies, specifically Penning, because Olave is going to look good in space. Alontae Taylor is going to look good in space. So I want to see Penning's progress. I want to see him tangle with some of those defensive linemen, because you don't get any better than that. I want to see how DeMarco Jackson is kind of, the 5th round pick, the linebacker, how he's digesting the defense, how he's coming along. Because in DeMarco Jackson's case, if the Saints are not going to sign Quan Alexander, it's because re-sign Quan Alexander, it's because DeMarco Jackson is developing. If Cesar Ruiz's job is in jeopardy. Calvin, that's kind of what I was driving at, actually. Or Onyemata.
Onyemata is going to be the one.
Yeah, I think so too.
He's got a nasty attitude as well.
Right. But if Penning develops rapidly, that means that James Hurst is your 6th offensive lineman, which means if Cesar Ruiz is again Cesar Ruiz, then you have a viable option to turn to other than Calvin Throckmorton. So the trenches and the battles in the trenches. I don't want to see how how much more mobility Jameis Winston has in that knee. Very simple stuff.
Sean, how about you? Is there anything you're looking to see in training camp? I mean, granted, shorts and shells, but still, anything you want to see?
Well, the same things that Bob mentioned, obviously, but I would, as he alluded to earlier in the program, I just want to see us get through this without any significant freak injuries.
Yes, absolutely.
I want everyone to be able and available for training camp when it rolls around.
Thank you, Jerry, and happy early
Thanks,
birthday.
Jerry.
I know next
Yes.
Tuesday is your birthday.
Happy birthday, Jerry.
Just in case you don't remember it. I think
Same day as my son.
there you go. I think the thing I want to see is I
Yeah.
want to see what kind of communication the secondary has. I mean, you lost Malcolm Jenkins
That's big.
and you lost Marcus Williams, and Malcolm Jenkins kind of ran the show back there and made sure people were in the right position. They're still trying to feel this out, and ironically, we were talking about Deshaun Watson most of the show, but Marcus May still hasn't settled this case with for this DUI, and he's not going to be suspended until this case is settled.
Right.
So yeah, I want to see where he fits in this defense, where they're going to put him, and I think they're going to move the pieces around. You're going to see some cases where he's down in the box. You can see him sometimes single high, depending on what they're doing. I just want to see with all these moving parts, who turns out to be the leader and who's organizing that secondary back there. The cornerback, the rookie, they're going to continue to play him outside the corner.
Yeah.
We all thought that Adobe really kind of locked down that job. Paulson. I'm sorry, Adobe. I said I'm going back to my desktop publishing days when I said that. My God, where did that come from? I'm going full Ralph Marlboro here. I meant Adidas. But we all assumed Paulson. Yeah, that's fine. We all assumed Paulson and Debo had the job locked up. I do want to see that too. But we all thought he had that job locked up. But they're talking about Jackson playing on the outside like that. Like they want to see a battle between not Jackson. I'm sorry. Here we go again. We want to see Adebo and the rookie from Tennessee, who
Taylor.
Thank you. How could I forget this name? Taylor, Planet of the Apes. Come on, make the connection. This is how my stupid mind works. I'm sorry, guys. My mind makes connections like that so I can remember people's names. So yeah, Taylor, Planet of the Apes. Get your stinking filthy hands. No, get your filthy hands off of me, you stinking dirty ape. That I remember that. So anyway, I want to see that. That's what I really want to look at. And of course, the injuries and stuff, but I really want to see how the secondary responds because I think we have a good pass rush. I think we have a good linebacking core. Not very deep, but we have a good linebacking core. But that secondary with so many question marks out there, I don't know. That's going to be watching them all off season and all training camp, to see where these guys end up and how this thing plays out. The only one I know for sure who's going to be out there is Marcus Lattimore on the corner. That's all I know. The rest of them, I don't know.
Yeah, listen, and I've written about it a couple of times and got a little bit of backlash for it. But next to lack of depth at running back, to me, this is the biggest potential weakness on this roster right now. Not the talent. This secondary has the talent to be the best defensive backfield in Saints history. But the communication on that back end with two new safeties, that's going to be huge. And the more reps they get, the bigger key it's going to be. To open that regular season, especially when you're looking at facing Tom Brady in week 2.
Absolutely. I don't know if he's going to shut everybody up, but I just want to see Trotman just reach Josh Hill status. I don't need to see Jimmy Graham. Josh Hill's good. Playoff Josh Hill is even better, but Josh Hill is good. But yeah, I just. And of course, I want to see, like Sean said, I want to see everybody come out of this thing healthy. So, anyway, we'll talk about that because when our show starts next week, the first day of the full mini camp starts. It goes from the 14th to the 16th, middle of the week, weekend, For those of you who want to go, they will have it open for the fans. Those of you who want to stand out there in that hot ass sun on metal
Hell.
bleachers, knock yourself out. I'm too old for that shit.
I've been down there this time of the year. No.
It gets worse in August. It's worse.
Oh yeah,
in
August is the worst.
Yeah. But yeah. So we'll have some news to talk about, and then we can try and figure out what we're going to talk about all those 5 weeks between the end of mini camp and the beginning of training camp. When they show up, we'll be desperate for topics. In the meantime, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.